Good Thursday morning, everybody. Today's episode is going to be a little different from our other episodes. There is no special guest today, unfortunately, but this one is going to be a special episode where I'm going to talk about triads and different qualities of triads and different inversions, and then I'm going to do some ear training practice with y'all. So anybody who needs to practice identifying these chords, this is a great place to start. Personally, when I was taking AP Theory, I loved practicing identifying chords and scales and intervals, stuff like that. And I used musictheory.net a lot, which a lot of theory students do use, which is a fantastic website. I love musictheory.net. However, what I didn't like about the website was if you get a question wrong, it doesn't tell you what the correct answer is. So my hope with this episode of the podcast is that we'll get to practice identifying chords together, and you can play along at home, and I will let you know after I play the chords what the correct answer is. So for today, the first thing I'm going to do is talk about 4 different kinds of triads and how they're used in music. And then we're going to start our ear training practice. We're going to work our way up. So start from easier exercises and then go to more challenging ones. And you can replay this stuff, of course, if you need to practice again. So first I'm going to play all the qualities of the chords, major, minor, diminished, and augmented in root position. Then we're going to try them in first inversion and then in second inversion. And then I'm going to mix them up at the end so that we can have a little bit of fun. All right, let's get started. All right, so first I'm going to explain what triads are. Triads are a group of notes, 3 to be specific, hence the tri, that make up a chord with a quality that's either going to be major, minor, diminished, or augmented. Those are the 4 basic triads. They can be played melodically, which means each note of the triad alone, so it sounds like this. That would be a melodically played triad. Or it can be played harmonically, which is all of the notes at the same time. Like that. When they're played melodically, sometimes those are called arpeggios. So if you don't play an instrument that can play multiple notes at once, sometimes you might practice playing your arpeggios. So like this. Those are arpeggios. Triads are the foundation of which most chords are built upon. So 7 chords, extended chords are all built upon a triad usually. So let's go over the qualities of chords. First, we have a major chord, which is the first note of the scale, of a major scale. So we have the first note, the third note, and the 5th note. And I'm going to play this in the key of C. So we have a C scale. The first note is this, C. The third note is E. And the 5th note is G. So when you play those together, that's a C major chord. The next chord we have is a minor chord. This is built with the first note of the scale, the flat third, so you take the third and then you go down a half step. So here's the third, and there's the flat third. So 1, flat 3, and then 5. That makes a C minor chord. The next chord is diminished, which is made up of the first note, the flat third, and the flat 5th. So this was our regular 5th, and if you go down a half step, that's the flat 5th. In the key of C, that's C, E flat, and G flat. There's a diminished chord. And finally, we're going to talk about augmented chords. Augmented chords are made up of the first note, the third note, and a sharp 5, which is the fifth note raised a half step. So here's the fifth note, and you go up a half step. An augmented chord. All right, next I'm going to talk about where these chords are used. So, typically, major and minor keys have certain qualities to all the chords that are built upon each note in the key. So, for example, in a major key, the scale would sound like this. There are chords built upon every note in that scale. The qualities are dependent upon the notes in those chords. So, for example, in this key, in a major key, the chords built on the first note, the fourth note, and the fifth note are all major. So this is a 1 chord built on the first note, a 4 chord is major 2, and a 5 chord is also major. Those 3 chords happen to be major. Then chords built on the second, third, and 6 are all minor. For example, here's the 2 chord. That's a minor chord. The 3 chord is a minor chord. And the 6th chord is minor. And then chords built on the 7th note of a major scale are diminished. You can hear those stacked minor thirds. A diminished chord is made up of minor thirds. A minor third here, and a minor third here. So this is the 7th chord of the scale, which is diminished. Then in a minor key, which is chords based on a harmonic minor scale, we're going to use harmonic minor because that's one of the more common minor scales used. In a minor key, the chords built on the 3rd, 5th, and 6th notes of the scale are major. So here's our minor key. Here's the 3rd note, and the chord built upon it, a major chord. Pardon the out-of-tuneness of this piano. Then the 5th note is this, and the chord built upon it is this. Notice in the difference between if this were a natural minor or a harmonic minor. In a natural minor scale, the 7th note of the scale is a whole step away from the first note. This is the first note, and this is the 7th. But in harmonic minor, we raise the 7th note. We raise the leading tone to create that half step. So when you put that into the 5th chord of the scale, 5, sharp 7, and then 2. Those are the notes that build up that chord, and it makes it major because the 7th note is raised. Whereas if it was a natural minor, it would have been, this chord would be minor. But we raise the leading tone, making it major, so that it has that dominant effect that we want from a 5 chord. Anyways, that was a tangent. If you don't understand, that's okay, but I'm going to keep going. So that was the 5th chord, and then also the 6th chord, the chord built on the 6th note of a harmonic minor scale, is also major. There's the 6th chord, and it's major. Next, we have chords built on the 1st and 4th note of the scale, which are minor chords in a minor key. So the 1st chord, of course, is minor because we're in a minor key. So the 1 chord is minor, and the 4 chord is also minor. And then finally, for this harmonic minor scale, the chords built on the 2nd and 7th note of the scale are diminished. So there's do, re, this is the second note. There's our diminished chord, diminished 2 chord. And here's our 7. Also a diminished chord. Now, this is built on a harmonic minor scale where the 7th degree is, the leading tone is raised. But if we flatten that leading tone, so it's this note, that would make the 7th chord a major chord. So that's if it's a natural minor scale. But typically it's harmonic or melodic minor, which in that case, it would be a diminished chord. There you go. So those are the chords of major and harmonic minor scales. Notice the only qualities I talked about in that was major, minor, and diminished. So augmented chords don't typically show up naturally in a scale. However, they are used. So I'm going to speak briefly about some of the uses typically. They're less common, but when they are used, the purpose is usually to create tension and then resolve it as a passing. It acts like as a passing chord. So they always want to resolve up a 4th. So if we have an augmented chord, C augmented, let's see. That would be resolving up a 4th. I went from C augmented to F major. It resolves nicely because the sharp 5, this note wants to resolve up. And this note, which is the 3rd note of the C augmented chord, resolves up a half step to F. And then the root, C, stays because it's in a F chord, F-A-C. So, again, that sounds like this. C, E, G sharp. And then the E and the G sharp both resolve up a half step to F, major. This augmented chord often shows up in as a passing chord in chord progressions. So, for example, we could have a progression 5 augmented to 1. So a 5 chord already is a dominant chord, which leads to 1, which leads to tonic. And if you add that augmented chord in between, that creates even more tension. And then it wants to resolve up a 4th to the 1 chord. So in the key of C, we'll do a G chord. This is the 5 chord. And then 5 augmented. 1. So just like the motion from the C to F chord, this G chord resolves up a 4th. So we have G major, and then G augmented, you raise the 5th, and then the B and D sharp of the G chord both resolve up a half step and become C and E. And notice this kind of chord progression and using the augmented chord creates voice leading in the upper note. Voice leading is sort of melodic structures within a chord progression, sometimes in the bass, sometimes in the upper voices, but basically I'll just play that line so you can hear it individually. So in our G chord, the highest note, then when it becomes augmented, it gets raised to a sharp 5. And then when it resolves to the 1 chord, it goes up another half step. So the motion goes like this. It's chromatic motion up. And that's sort of the point of the use of this chord is to create voice leading in that upper line. All right, another chord progression that the augmented chord is used in is an augmented climb chord progression, and it's just what it sounds like. The upper voice, the 5th note of the scale, raises by half step each time, creating a chromatic line in the chord progression. And it sounds like this. So we start on a 1 chord, just a triad, a major triad, then make that augmented. Then we go to a 1/6 chord, which is a triad when you add the 6th note of the scale. Then we go to a dominant 7 chord, and then resolve to the 4 chord. Now I love this progression because not only does it have that nice ascending chromatic line, but also it makes use of a secondary dominant chord. Now I'm not going to go too deep into this. I think I'm going to do a separate episode just on those chords. But if you already happen to know what a secondary dominant chord is and understand that, this might be really interesting. So, like I said, we went from the 1 chord to the augmented 1, and then 1/6, 1/7. And if you know anything about secondary dominants, you might know that the 1/7 chord is actually the secondary dominant of the 4 chord, which means, so that means in the key of the 4 chord, in this case that would be F, in the key of F, the dominant chord in F is a C chord, a C dominant chord. And in the original key we're in, which is the key of C, so if we play a C dominant chord, that's the secondary dominant of F. It has that nice resolving tone. I love this chord progression because it has that nice chromatic upward motion, but also it makes use of a secondary dominant chord. Woohoo! All right. If that went totally over your head, don't worry about it. And we'll talk about secondary dominants at another time, and then you can come back and listen, and you'll be like, ooh, I know what that means. Oh, yeah, I also wanted to play an example of an augmented chord being used. So I'll play that now. It's this one's from Oh Darling, which is a Beatles song. The very beginning of the song opens up with an augmented chord, and then it resolves up a 4th. So I'll play that for you right now. Oh, darling. All right, now we're going to get into the fun part, which is the ear training practice. So the first exercise we're going to do is I'm going to play different chords of those 4 qualities, major, minor, diminished, or augmented, and then you have to identify. So what I'll do is I'm going to play first 5 different melodic ones, play them melodically like this, so you can identify all the intervals within the chords, and then I will play them harmonically. So then you have to pick out the intervals within your ear, or you have to identify it by the quality of the tone, anything that really helps you. So I'm going to play the chord 2 times, wait a couple beats, and then reveal the answer. Major. Major. Minor. Augmented. And one more melodic. Diminished. Now I'm going to play them harmonically 2 times and then reveal the answer. Minor. Augmented. minor, diminished, major. Awesome. Good practice. Next, for our next exercise, first I'm going to introduce inversions. So we're going to cover first inversions, and then we're going to practice identifying them. So a first inversion chord, all the chords I've been playing so far have been in root position, which means the first note of the chord is on the bottom, the third is in the middle, and the fifth is on the top. 1, 3, 5. If I were to play this chord in first inversion, I would move the root of the chord, which is the lowest note, up to the top. So the chord would start with the third note, next the fifth note, and then the final one is the first note of the scale. This is a first inversion major chord. The way I identify these chords is I listen for the root of the chord, this note, and hear where it is in the chord. So if I hear it on the bottom as the lowest note, I know it's a root position chord. And if I hear it on the top as the highest note, I know it's a first inversion chord. All right, I'm gonna play. This is a major first inversion. Oh, by the way, for today, I'm just gonna do inversions of major and minor chords because those are the most commonly inverted ones. So, you already heard a first inversion major chord. This is a first inversion minor chord. So we have the flat 3, 5, and 1. It kind of sounds like that rap song, which I don't know the name of, but I've heard way too many times. And so if that helps you identify it, then go ahead, use that. Whatever helps you remember, go ahead and use that. There's a first inversion minor chord. So now I'm going to play 5 melodic chords, major or minor, in first inversion, and then you will identify them, and then I'll play 5 harmonic chords in first inversion. These are all going to be major and minor. So your job is purely to identify the quality of the chord. Here we go. Major. Major. Minor. 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 All right, now I will play them harmonically. Major. Major. Minor. Major. minor. All right, good work. Next, I will introduce second inversion chords, and then we'll do an exercise with that one. So again, we're just going to work with major and minor chords. Second inversion is same process as first, except you do it twice. So you move the bass note, which is of a major chord. We're starting in root position. You move the bass note up to the top. Now we have a first inversion chord. Then to get from first inversion to second inversion, you move the bass note up to the top again. So now the bass note of a first inversion chord is this. You move that one up an octave too, so it becomes here. And now the second inversion chord is this. We have the fifth note on the bottom, the first note in the middle, and the third on top. The way I identify this inversion of a major chord is Reveille, which is the song that's played at camp, or it's a military song, but yeah, the trumpet player plays this to wake us up at camp. So I recognize it's the first three notes of Reveille. Now, second inversion minor chord is the same thing, except the third note is lowered a half step because we have a flat third. So again, the third note is on top of this chord, so we flat that, and then we have a second inversion minor chord. It reminds me of the Moonlight Sonata. All right, I'm going to play again 5 different melodic triads in second inversion, either major or minor, and you identify the quality. Then I'm going to play them harmonically, and you identify. Here we go. Minor. Minor. Major. Major. Minor. And now we'll do harmonic. Major. Minor. 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 Major. For our final exercise here, I'm going to play chords in any of the 4 qualities we covered today and in any of the 3 inversions, but the inversions will just be on major and minor chords. So if you hear a major or minor chord, and you know it's major or minor, and you want to go up for the extra challenge, try identifying which inversion it's in. So I'm going to do 10 of these randomly selected chords, play them melodically, just how we have before, so 2 times and then give the answer, and then 10 harmonically. So this could be, remember, it could be major in any of the inversions, root position, first inversion, or second inversion. It could be a minor chord in any of the inversions. It could be a diminished chord in root position or an augmented chord in root position. Try your best and good luck! Augmented. Minor first inversion. Minor root position. Diminished. Major second inversion. Augmented. Minor root position. Diminished. Major first inversion. Diminished. All right, now we will move on to the harmonic section. Minor first inversion. Minor root position. Major second inversion. Diminished. Minor first inversion. Augmented. Minor second inversion. Major root position. Augmented. Diminished. All right, that wraps up our ear training for today. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had fun. I certainly did. And congratulations on completing your ear training of major, minor, diminished, and augmented chords. And the more you practice this, the easier it will get. As always, theme music is composed and arranged by Isaac Houghton. The musicians are Michael Sakash on alto and tenor sax, Brian Lucy on baritone saxophone, Quinn and me on trumpet, me on trombone, Ethan St. Pierre on drums, and Isaac on bass. Our cover art is painted by Sierra Rollman. Recording equipment thanks to the FA Arts Department, and thank you to Mr. Swayze for teaching me how to use the equipment, and of course, thanks to my amazing theory teachers who inspired me to pursue this project. I will be back next week for more Thursday morning fun.